Hello marketer, it's Ty here, bringing you another episode of Lean Mean Marketing Teams. Today we have an illuminating discussion with Jac Phillips, ex-Senior Director and Head of Marketing for Visa in Australia, New Zealand and South Pacific. Prior to Visa, Jac had an illustrious career in financial services with Bank of Melbourne, ANZ Bank and also spent time with IBM. Jac is also a marketing advisory board member with Deakin Uni and has been recognised in the Asia Top 50 Women Leaders by World Federation of Marketing Professionals. Today's show explores two critical topics. The main topic is around high performance and creativity without big budgets or big teams. Or put another way, how to do more with less, including the importance of prioritisation. We also chat about Jac's leadership lessons and the value of coaches and mentors for marketing leaders. There's some fantastic examples in this show about creating platforms versus campaigns and purpose-led business strategies that other parts of the organisation can rally around, leveraging an entire organisation to advocate and amplify your brand, about creating mutual value creation partnerships, using owned assets to sell media. And there's also some beautiful leadership lessons to take on board. Jac's energy and enthusiasm for marketing and leadership is infectious. So I think if you're grappling with how to do more with less and punch above your weight as a team, and you want some leadership tips to keep charging ahead, then please tune in and enjoy the show.
Welcome to Lean Mean Marketing Teams with Ty Hayes, where you'll hear from leading CMOs and thought leaders about what it takes to create a high-performance marketing team. This podcast is brought to you by Growth Generators, a consulting firm that helps CMOs design and build modern marketing teams that drive growth. If you need help optimizing your marketing team, head to growthgenerators.io. Now, let's get on to the show.
Welcome, Jac Phillips, to the Lean Mean Marketing Teams podcast.
Thank you, Ty. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, I noticed you're connected and knew some of our other guests like Lisa Ronson, and we've had some good chat behind the scenes. So I know you've got an interest in leadership and coaching and can't wait to dig into that today.
Absolutely.
And to kick things off, you've had quite the career. Can you give us a bit of a story about your career and some insights into that?
Sure. Well, it's been a long career, and for that I'm grateful. But my first job was actually in radio in New Zealand. I was so good at talking too much at school that I decided I'd go and get paid for it, and I loved it. And working in the media taught me a lot about communication, the power of speech, how to use your voice for impact, and certainly how to speak clearly. So my next two jobs post my first radio gig were also in radio, but this time I'd moved to Australia. And I stayed in radio really until about my mid-20s, where I landed my first job in marketing at AMP. And that role was to set up the database marketing for the AMP financial advisors, helping them use their data more effectively to manage their relationships and communicate updates to their clients. From there, I moved into the agency world, working for a direct marketing agency, Collins in Sydney. And then I went to Singapore and joined Leo Burnett. And the role at Leo Burnett was really interesting. It was setting up and running one of the first CRM programs for Procter & Gamble across Asia. And we did that for a good 12 to sort of 18 months. And then it was moved in-house to Procter & Gamble as it was so successful. By this time, I'd been headhunted by IBM in Singapore for a regional role. And I managed two roles at IBM. It was during a headcount freeze and a recruiting freeze and SARS and a whole lot of interesting macro environmental challenges, not unlike what we've just been through, but this was going back 20 years ago now. And the two roles at IBM, the first was the integrated marketing comms lead role, and the other was the marketing response center role. And they were both awesome. That was my first multinational experience. We returned back to Australia in the early 2000s. It was mid-2000s, around 2005. And that's when I joined the ANZ Bank. It was my first bank marketing their financial advice proposition. That was followed by another role after 4 years marketing the ANZ private wealth and trustee business. So all up, I spent about 10 fantastic years with the ANZ before I got a tap on the shoulder for a chat with the CEO of the reincarnated Bank of Melbourne, which was part of the Westpac Group. And I spent 3.5 years as head of brand and marketing for the Bank of Melbourne. And then I got moved to Visa to lead the brand and marketing for Australia, New Zealand and South Pacific, where I have been for just over 4 years, up until 4 weeks ago.
Yeah. Wow, amazing career. Strong themes there around CRM and data-driven marketing and really helping companies evolve in that way. And I can't wait to dig into some of that experience in a bit more detail and what you learned through all that experience. So left Visa recently. Have you been enjoying the break so far?
Any opportunity to step off or step away from something that's consumed so much of your life is a treat. I've been really loving the break, Ty. Yeah, we recently purchased a small farm. I was just telling you about it off camera with my family, just out of Melbourne, 1 hour out of the city north. So being able to spend some time on the farm amongst nature as we set it up for our horses has been so rejuvenating. And my first meeting every morning is with nature now. So it's a magical way to reset after the corporate life. What else have I been doing the last 4 weeks? I've joined the AICD, the Australian Institute of Company Directors. I've been engaging a lot with their content. It is fantastic. Found my first board mentor, and I'm also completing my executive and leadership coaching diploma. It's been a lovely balance of farm work, governance and coaching, as well as catching up with friends and getting to know my new regional community across the past month.
Sounds lovely. Being a country boy myself, appreciate the benefits that nature brings and the peace and calm of living out that way. So hope you keep on enjoying that. This podcast is obviously all about how to lead and design high-performance teams. And love today to discuss, I think you'd have some great experience around the perennial challenge facing marketing teams, how to better prioritise their work and kind of do more with less. And given your interest in leadership and coaching, I'd also love to dig into some of your leadership principles and lessons and maybe discuss why coaches and mentors are so important. How does that sound?
Terrific. Sounds really good.
Excellent. So beginning then with this prioritization piece, starting with why. Why do you think it is that marketing teams always seem to be overwhelmed with more work than they're resourced to handle?
It's a great question. Look, marketing is the function responsible for the most important audience, the one that drives growth and profit for businesses, the customer. So in my opinion, the marketing team holds the key to growth and profit because of the two capabilities that marketing is the expert at. The first capability being customer insights and behaviour, and the second and very important capability, creativity when it comes to solving business problems or identifying business opportunities. And I see both of those as being competitive advantages to any brand and organisation. So when you have a board, a CEO and other C-suite members who truly recognise the value that the marketing function brings to their business, then they want marketing across everything. And I've always seen this as a great problem to have, actually. Where it goes awry is when the marketing team is seen as order takers or the colouring in department, only there to create quick responses to art requests or quickly get a flyer out the door. And when this happens, it requires immense leadership and courage from the head of marketing to reposition that function to the C-suite as a profit centre and a growth contributor to the business. And it needs to be seen as this right from the very top here in order for the layers below to appreciate and understand what a true marketing function is actually capable of achieving.
Yeah. Absolutely. A lot in that. I think that positioning and internal positioning is such an important role for a CMO to be positioned as that growth driver, the strategic centre, and make sure that other stakeholders know what kind of work they're there to do and how that work gets done. I think there's so much that goes into this challenge as well around the structure of the team, the audiences that you serve, how the work comes into the team, depending on how it's structured, whether it's, product and business unit focused or centralised, decentralised, hub and spoke, the range of different stakeholders that you have. I think there's also something around processes in the team, how well are they defined and how quickly do things move through the pipe, skills and competencies of the team. But I think you've touched on some big ones that if you do your job well and you position your team well and you're really driving growth for the company, then you just need a lot of different work. So then I think once you've positioned well and getting these requests for work and you're creating work, what do you think makes prioritization so difficult?
Look, a number of things, but predominantly it comes back to a lack of clarity when it comes back to the broader business strategy. And I guess what I mean by this is if you as the senior most leader of marketing isn't involved in setting this strategy as part of that business leadership team, or at the very least, if you as the leader don't have an understanding of how your team will contribute to the business strategy, then it's very hard to say no to the orders that come in from various parties. So having the clarity as well as the courage to ask yourself three important questions every time something additional comes in on top of your plan. And those three questions would be, number one, does this request align to the business and marketing strategy? Number two, do you have the resources as a marketing function, money and or people, to actually take on this ask? And number three, and this is the most important one, what will you trade off? Which tactic in the plan now needs to be deprioritised? And then after you've evaluated all of the above, you should have a quick and open conversation with the CEO or the person that you report to as the head of marketing. Is it really critical that you are constantly communicating any expected or requested change to what has been agreed and aligned? Yes. Over-communicate. Never, ever fear updating people, and particularly the people that influence the most important decisions. At the end of the day, you are the trustee of the marketing budget. You actually don't own it. And I think this is really important to always remember. If you're not bringing others in on your decision journey, then chances are things will become overwhelming.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that point around what else needs to shift or what gets deprioritized is often the hardest one, I think. And the saying no, I think if you don't have the positioning or the trust with the other team members, then and even below different levels, I guess, setting the expectation at CMO level that we're going to work on the right work and do the right work with our partners and position ourselves in the right way. And saying no is okay at the right levels, and you've communicated that to your team and they know what the process is. Not that you want to become the no team, but you're not just the team that always says yes no matter what the request is. And I think
exactly right.
That prioritization, choosing the most important big ticket projects or those projects that have the biggest result is really important as well. I actually had Andrea Freire from Agile Sherpas on the episode last week talking about the state of agile marketing, and she mentioned in that report that teams wanting to better prioritize their work and handle a changing workload is kind of one of the number one reasons they go to agile, and a key part of doing that is prioritization and making sure you're working on the most important work first, which is really important. Now, what have you done when entering a new team? Sometimes it's difficult to actually get an accurate perspective on the workload and the related resourcing issues and constraints. How have you approached that?
I think if you want to be a successful marketer, so someone who really influences great outcomes and leads a contributing function, which marketing is, then you need to build trusted relationships really quickly. And the way to do this is to be honest and upfront on who you are as a leader, your style, your expectations of others, what they can expect of you, and essentially understand from your new team what they're looking for in this new leader. Remember, often teams are without a leader for a little while. They may not have loved their last leader, or they may have really loved their last leader. So you're coming into an environment with a lot of uncertainty. So work with that team. What are their thoughts on the strategy, the work? Other colleagues, divisions in the business? What are the other partners like, such as your agencies? What's been done well? And very importantly, from their perspective, what can be done better? I like the simplicity of the start, stop, continue discussion. They have that as well. Every team I've inherited, I've spent a lot of time talking to them one-on-one first, and then also as a team in those early stages, probably again, over-communicating, When I joined Bank of Melbourne, I did one-on-ones with each of the marketing team right from day one. My first meeting at 9 a.m. with the first person in the marketing team. And these were informal, relaxed conversations, positioned as getting to know each other. And I made that very clear up front. Of course, people are nervous. Who is this blonde force of nature going a million miles an hour with wacky ideas? I sit next to them in my office, never across a desk. And I use humour as a way to diffuse or relax the environment. I find humour easy, as I find a lot of things funny, and I'm laughing at myself constantly. I'm a bit of an idiot. And it's amazing what you learn when you ask really good questions and then shut up and listen. I learned about the challenges they face with the conflicting expectations of others in the business. I've learned about the impacts on a team when there hasn't been a leader in place for a few months. And ultimately, I learned from the team what they've found difficult, where they've found joy, what's working. And the consistency of their feedback, even though they were all speaking to me separately, was noted. The agencies that were outstanding and the people in the businesses who didn't get what they did. So I had all of this insight to then start thinking about how I would help position our team and myself to be successful.
Yeah, makes sense. And while it's time consuming to have all of those, there's no better way to do it, is there? It's like qual research, in-depth research, one-to-ones, and really getting to know your team, understanding them, building trust, having empathy. Yeah, fantastic way to get your finger on the pulse. So once you've identified the issues and the major pain points, what strategies have you then implemented to either help the team prioritise or to help them get better leverage from every initiative?
Going back to what I've just mentioned before, as a team, we quickly evaluate the marketing strategy and how it aligns with the broader business strategy. If there's anything we're questioning or that we don't quite agree or support as a team, then I see it as my role to make the call. That's why you're the head. I haven't always done that independently. Now, an example would be recently at Visa, where I spoke to the GCM, our group country manager, and asked for his feedback. I then had his support on the decision made to ensure that we're on track. Look, leverage is a great word, and it's actually a great solution. And I've done a few things to get better leverage, particularly when you are working in a fast-paced environment And we never have, and we never will have, an abundance or an infinite set of resources. So I've driven a purpose-led full business strategy versus just a marketing response to the business needs. Now, the benefits of a purpose-led business strategy that marketing is absolutely a very big part of, leading, but certainly engaging others, the benefits are multiple. You can draw on other budget lines, not just marketing. You can engage more of the business on this journey. They've all got skin in the game then. You can develop aligned strategic partnerships versus just sponsorships. But most of all, where we've had success is we've been able to create longer, more sustainable platforms to get your messaging out there versus just campaigns. And I think this is particularly smart. As the longer and more frequent your marketing is messages in the market, the more salient it becomes. And anyone who works with media agencies knows there's certainly cost efficiencies in long-term media planning. And when you've got consistent creative assets available to you, you can actually take advantage of distress bookings as well. So you're actually getting more for your investment. Two recent examples of where I've been involved in this platform versus just a campaign was the Makers platform that we rolled out across the entire Bank of Melbourne here in Victoria. And that was adopted from the branch staff up and from the CEO and his exco down. And rather than just advertising a home loan rate or a credit campaign, we actually used our purpose as the core strategy and the creative proposition, the Makers, everything else rolled up to. We did something similar with Visa in the past 18 months, where we saw an opportunity to get behind small and micro businesses during really difficult times. After that experience, drought in the New South Wales region, then followed by bushfires across most states. You remember that dreadful Christmas period the year before last. And then, of course, COVID. So our European team at Visa had already come up with a campaign in the UK called Where You Shop Matters. And we loved that line and what it could stand for, aligned back to our purpose here in Australia, New Zealand, South Pacific. So we leveraged that existing creative and we're able to focus on our local agency's time and our budget on how the actual campaign created from the UK could manifest itself in our local markets as part of a much bigger purpose platform for the longer term. It's actually a really smart way of leveraging, I think.
That's powerful. So to develop that purpose-led business strategy, I assume it's looking at your brand strategy and your brand pillars and kind of matching that to your organisation vision and purpose, and then working with other stakeholders to develop combined business strategy that's broader than just a marketing strategy. Is that how it works?
Yeah, spot on. Look, I don't know any brand or business, and especially the big global brands, believe it or not, that has limitless marketing budgets. In fact, I'd go as far to say the bigger the brand and organisation, the more scrutinisation your budget gets. And I learned a new word recently called reprioritisation of the budget. That means reduction of the budget. It's a great code word, and that becomes even more frequent. So the leaders and the teams who can focus on more creativity to achieve performance without relying on big budgets, and I don't think they exist anyway, they're the teams who are recognised as really, you don't get accused of being just a cost centre. You can actually demonstrate being really prudent money managers and trustees of that marketing budget, and do that by tying back quantifiable contributions to the business.
I love that example. I think it was the Bank of Melbourne from the customer support staff up and the CEO down. What did that look like in terms of that internal branding and that EX and how they were demonstrating the brand?
Yeah. Look, it came back to customer insights here. So what do we know about Victorians? If we were going to be the bank for Victoria, and we had a very clear purpose, it was to create prosperity for Victoria. And nobody shied away from that. We're a bank. If we can make people prosperous, our customers, our small business customers, our retail customers, our big corporate businesses, our private bank customers, if we can make them prosperous, then more money goes into the Victorian community, and we can actually be really purposeful and help more of our neighbourhoods. And we had a great neighbourhood fund that we actually drew on to give money back to the community, and we could only do that if we were prosperous. So what we did was we actually engaged with our staff and we said, we think that everybody in Victoria wants to make it. And of course, that could be said for anywhere in the world. But we also said, we've done some research and we know when we make a coffee in Melbourne or Victoria, we make the best coffee. If we're going to do some art, we do great art and we put it on the Tullamarine Freeway. Whatever we do in Victoria, it's part of our psyche. We actually have to make it really good. So we said, this is actually about people who are makers. And they resonated with that. We tested it with the staff first and foremost, and they said, we can get behind this. We're makers. We're trying to help people make it in the branch. We're trying to help people make it in our local communities. So we certainly sold in what we thought was the right proposition. They backed it. When they believed in it, they spoke about it with such passion. When they were in the front line talking to customers, when they were out at barbecues on weekends talking to friends and family, nobody needed to do any advertising other than just listen to the passion that was coming from the team. The other thing we had access to, which every brand and business does, Ty, is owned assets. Yeah. So our digital channels like social and web, we created a beautiful magazine, a custom publication that we distributed via our branch network. All of these owned assets was media. All of that media could be priced and valued. We could turn that into things that could help others make it. So we worked with our media agency to sell some of the space, and by sharing our media assets with our strategic partners, our business customers, our small little micro entrepreneurs, we returned value back to them by amplifying their brands to a broader customer base. It became a very good acquisition tool versus competitors too. If they were thinking about which bank to go with, and we could say, well, we can actually give you 20Ks worth of media value if you come and join us because we've already got these owned assets and we'll actually amplify your brand. It became very, very strong.
I love that. So smart. And I think owned assets are often overlooked, aren't they? We put budget towards the paid spend and focus on that. But yeah, especially when you've got a branch network and probably a lot of traffic to your websites and all these other assets you can leverage. It's such a smart play to leverage that. We've touched on a few things there. This creativity, the platforms, diverse campaigns, this kind of mutual value creation and owned assets to sell media. What else have you tried to get greater leverage?
Look, there's a lot of things you can do. It's about being creative and giving yourself and the team the capacity to actually step back and look a bit more broadly at what you can do. Every one of the strategic partnerships we've entered into in my role as head of marketing, whether it be for Visa, Bank of Melbourne, the ANZ, IBM in Singapore, it was sitting down and talking about mutual value creation with that partnership. What can we actually achieve together versus a logo just being slapped on something? And I think those days are over. I don't think people do sponsorships anymore. I think they very much do partnerships. When you create a partnership with another brand organisation, all of a sudden you've got all their assets opened up to you. With Bank of Melbourne, we had a great partnership with the NGV, and we chose a number of different exhibitions that were coming to Victoria that we would partner with the NGV on. We got access to some incredible creative opportunities. One example that comes to mind was Victor and Rolf, the two Dutch fashion designers who were showcasing the Victor and Rolf exhibition at the NGV, and they were coming to Melbourne as part of that. So we asked them, would they help us with one of our Bank of Melbourne campaigns and actually design a fashionable Visa debit card? Now, this is going back a few years when debit was just coming into the marketplace, and debit cards or credit cards were pretty standard, pretty boring. They were just the bank brand with the Visa logo on it. We said, how do we make this cool? So they actually designed this really bespoke Visa debit card that was by Victor and Rolf because they were makers. And so it aligned beautifully back up to the Makers campaign. We then did a partnership with Vogue, and we said, okay, what can we do with you, Vogue? We're showcasing this Victor and Rolf bespoke debit card. Why don't we do something? So if you sign up to get a Visa debit card that is a limited edition Victor and Rolf created version, you'll actually also get an online digital subscription to Vogue, and we'll cover the cost of that. And it helped us build up some female customers that we were keen to engage. Again, leveraging the assets you've got access to, I think is not difficult. It just requires some creativity.
Yeah. And that creativity, the process to identify the right partners, how do you go about that? Is it thinking about aligned businesses which may have a similar audience where you're not in competition that aligns with the purpose of your campaign, or what approach did you use to identify the right partners?
Yeah, so again, we don't look at it as a campaign. We start with our broader marketing strategy. What are we standing for the next 1 year? Even better if it's the next 2 or 3 years. What is it that we're trying to achieve? What is our purpose? Who are the strategic partners that align to that purpose, that also have audiences, that also are likely to be the sort of audiences that would see value in what we're doing and that we would see value in actually having on our journey? And then it's sitting down and being very transparent, having great conversations. Here's our strategy. Here's what we're trying to achieve. Please share your broader strategy. What are you trying to achieve? Okay, what can we do together? And they will bring you awesome ideas, things that you hadn't thought possible, or things that you can't access because for whatever reason, but they've got access to. And that's when you start to really get some great outcomes.
Wow, there's been a lot covered in this interview so far. As a marketing leader, we know you like to spend more time taking action and less time taking notes. So we've got you covered. We packaged up all the tips, strategies, and resources from each episode into some beautifully crafted notes just for you. Not ugly AI-generated transcripts, but real notes taken by a real person on our team. To grab the notes, head on over to growthgenerators.io, look out for this podcast episode and download the notes. But be quick, they're only live for a few weeks after the episode airs. Now, back to the show.
Love it. Anything else then around either the skills of the team or leveraging other thought leadership or social media?
Thought leadership's everything. Gosh, it's such a bandied about term now. Yet years ago, we recognised, and it was when I was running the private bank marketing function for ANZ, it wasn't about throwing a lot of money and rewards to high net wealth people that wasn't going to engage them. They had more money than the bank. We had to be really creative and think, what was it that they didn't have access to? And often it was new, innovative ideas and global thought leaders, people doing really incredible things that could help shape and form what they do. So we started this event called the Access to Experts series. And one of the first people we brought in for that was this awesome woman called Megan Quinn, who was originally a Queenslander who co-founded Net-a-Porter.com in Europe a long, long time ago. And that was revolutionary for its time because it was a digital-only online shopping portal, and it was premium and it was beautiful. And Megan had sold out Net-a-Porter.com, had returned to Australia. She was living in Melbourne with her daughters. And I learned that she was here and we started talking, and I asked her would she be my first thought leader and help me go around Australia talking to private bank clients about what it was like and what she'd learned setting up Net-a-Porter. And she thankfully agreed to join us on this roadshow. And we saw some incredible new customers come out of the woodwork that none of our private wealth advisors have been speaking with, mainly women who have a lot of influence and a lot of wealth who weren't engaged with our brand at the time because they weren't sort of finding it potentially interesting, or if they were certainly not coming forward and talking to us or engaging with us. And when we took the Access to Experts series around Australia, and we did that with a number of different thought leaders, it really gave us a much deeper understanding of our clients. We built deeper relationships, and we then had all this content that we could then also amplify through other channels. It was a great strategy.
Yeah, fantastic. It goes to the heart of great content marketing, doesn't it? You know, provide value first and then the benefits come off the back of that. Great creativity there and experimentation and thought leadership in your approach. So amazing. Now, the other part I think of high performance teams and prioritization is team alignment. So how do you keep the team aligned around these platforms or around the marketing strategy?
There's this fantastic saying, I can't remember who said it. A friend of mine, I think it was Margie Hartley, might have shared it with myself and a group of people. And it was, the quality of your conversations dictate the quality of your relationships. And the quality of your relationships dictate the quality of your life. And I've never forgotten that. It is about coming together regularly as a group to converse and to communicate and to tell stories, to share updates and ensure that there's transparency about what we're all working on and who we are as people. You know, I'm a great believer in sharing the load. We cross over in the teams that I'm in. We get involved in each other's work to support each other, and we want to learn. We have in the team in Visa this awesome media expert, and she couldn't teach us more, and she loved it. And she wanted to tell us about programmatic. She wanted us to understand the tech and the ad tech. That's not stuff that everyone gets access to, but of course it's critical today. And so my marketing finance guy becomes a client marketer because he's really interested in our clients' co-marketing budgets and how they're being sent, you know. And the brand team who works with me can only be successful if they're joined at the hip with the insights team. So you get all this lovely crossover, because a curious team is an engaged team. And the teams I've had the great privilege of working with are all equal owners of our strategy, as well as the quarterly updates that we have to give back to our leadership team. we can't all be there all of the time. So we need to be able to support each other and cross over. I mentioned earlier communication and communicating and over communicating. We do that all the time. We bring in our partners and agencies as our extended team. We give them a heads up on the business strategy right from the start of the planning stage. We ask them to feed into that strategy. We then provide all of them with updates on our performance every quarter, given they're critical and also owners of this performance. So many agencies have said to me, no one brings us in and tells us how it all went. We get involved in the strategy, we get involved in the execution, and then we hear crickets. We're dying to know, is it working? So I think it's absolutely conversing, communicating and engaging as many people as possible and ensuring that people are kept in the journey and kept engaged.
Yeah. So much in that. And I think, we've used over communicate a few times in this episode already, but I don't think there's such a thing in marketing. There's no such thing, especially around trying to build the culture of the team and having that openness and transparency. And the same, I think, as I matured in my marketing career, started bringing agencies in a lot earlier on the conversation and helping them formulate the strategy and understand the business problems and then come up with ways to help solve those rather than just firing briefs over the table. And by bringing all the agencies together in the same room so they all understand it, what role they play, and they can then co-own that and really be part of the extended team. We even created a partnership manifesto with our agencies on how we wanted to operate as a team and what transparency we wanted and how we would celebrate success. And then I think putting in place the timeframes and the regular heartbeat of these conversations. So it's not ad hoc. It's like, okay, when are we going to have our quarterly sessions, our weekly, our monthly? I think scheduling that stuff in is really important, as well as the ad hoc conversations and the coffee room conversations is critical. But putting it in the diary, because your diary is so jammed.
Absolutely.
Got to have that regular cadence of meetings. Is that what you found? What kind of cadence did you put these different things?
Absolutely. So nearly every team meeting, we had the agency partners in our team meetings, unless there was something that was confidential or I needed just to bring my team together. And of course you do that and you do that regularly. But generally there was always an agency in our meetings. And I love what you just said about celebrating success. One of the things I've always done is, yes, of course you go out for drinks and you have lunches and you do all of that. Well, in the old days, less and less today, and now we're on screens a lot. When you are running incredible thought leadership opportunities and working with people like Malcolm Gladwell, you bring your agencies in and say, come and join this session so you can listen and learn. It's nice to give back, and we've done that a lot. And as a result, they get a lot from that, and they are so grateful. It takes you a long way. They will work over and above to earn that respect.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I love that. And it goes both ways. And bringing the agencies into the thought leadership you're providing, bringing your agencies in to provide thought leadership, and using your team as experts, I think, is often overlooked as well. And there's so much expertise in the team, and by giving them the platform to share that with others, everyone learns a little bit more about what the other team does, and that just creates better harmony and understanding and more T-shaped people in the team, which is fantastic. Now, you mentioned some measures that you watch and giving that back to your agencies and back to the team. What have you found have been some critical measures that keep the team on track?
If I stand on the balcony versus being on the dance floor, which you need to do as the senior leader, to me, some of the critical measures, and you have to start with this one, is the team's energy and engagement levels, and the fact that they stay in the team. That's the first measure I track, because without them, we can't do anything. Clearly, we also measure all of the brand metrics you'd expect every quarter, brand awareness, brand affinity, brand preference. We look at what our competitors are doing. All of our campaigns that we run, we pre-test as well as during and post. We conduct social listening, overall media tracking, and of course, when it comes to any co-marketing that we do with our clients, which are the big banks, issuers, acquirers, also merchants, we agree with them right up front what the KPIs are, and then we assess those in the partnership with them. We track our clients and are they satisfied with us annually. But my most favoured tracking mechanism, and it's an incredibly complex one, but it's worth every minute of the complexity, and you have teams that help you with this, particularly in your research and your insights team, is MROI, so marketing return on investment. And that uses some really great analysis to look at how much that we've invested across the different channels and campaigns versus the payment volume, at Visa anyway, achieved and attributed to the timing of the assets in marketing. So Scott Tanner, the CEO of Bank of Melbourne, used to say to me, facts are your friends, Jac. Anyone can argue an opinion, but you can't argue a fact. So get the facts around your MROI and use that as your constant measure of whether you are making an impact. And if you're not, then change it.
Yeah. So important. And I imagine then insights were always your friend, and did you always look to make sure you had the right data analysts, data scientists? Was that an area that
always
seemed to strengthen?
Always.
Yeah.
Totally. Rocket scientists, you so need them. The people that delve into the data, the people that actually draw out something and say, this looks interesting. And I'd look at it and say, yeah, looks interesting, but so what? And they'd say, give me a week. And then they would come back and say, okay, from the so what, we've learned 5 key behavioural changes that have gone on in the last 6 months. We think there's something in this that we should be thinking about, either to shape a campaign going forward or shape some messaging that we actually want to put out. Let's test it. So those people are critical to your business. They're your competitive advantage.
Yeah, absolutely. 100% agree. And lastly, before we switch gears to our leadership and coaching topic, did you do anything around agile marketing or lean processes to kind of help clear the path for the team and how they operated?
This is a really interesting question, Ty. I think due to the nature or leanness of the teams I've led in the past 7 years, they've all been tiny. They've all been around 10 people. Yeah. They've all been efficient and they've had to do more with less. So it's what's kept us sustainable and our budgets from being cut is the fact that we've been this lean, mean marketing machine, or as I called us, a centre of excellence. And rather than run those short-term campaigns, we've adopted these longer-term messaging and we've developed business-wide creative platforms that have utilised a whole lot of integrated channels. I would say that we've been agile in the fact we were able to move fast based on an agreed strategy, prioritise, and then be flexible using the stakeholders to help us identify what we focused on over something else. I mentioned pre-testing before. We've always pre-tested at the very early stages before committing full investment on longer-term frame platforms. So any tweaks and learnings can be made quickly in those upfront stages. Yeah. And something else, when I think about agile, that I've done with my team is identify at the very start who has the skills and expertise in the areas that you need to draw on. You'd be amazed by having this conversation what additional experience or areas of specialisation people actually have in their team that they may not have shared or that you might not have been aware of that's really useful to the broader group. I'll give you an example of this. A number of my team across the past 10 years, that's across ANZ, Bank of Melbourne and Visa, have come from different industries to just financial services. So this meant that they were bringing to our business an intimate understanding of different new or alternative processes, different customer insights, different market information. And they also had access to different networks and people that we could access. And that was really beneficial to the marketing team. So when you're hiring, try and hire a bit broader. And when you bring those people in, don't just jam down their throat what you think they need to know in this new industry or in this actual function. Ask them what they know. Because chances are it'll actually really amplify and bring a lot of value to your business.
Yeah, so important. And so much in that around Agile. You've obviously got the continuous optimization and the test and learn. You've got small teams really working together and T-shaped kind of people within that. And I love that unpacking the experience and the skills of the team. Like, again, I've used team profiling tools and then had sessions where people shared that back with each other, and that identified, there's some on a wheel that shows you personality strengths in terms of whether they're creators or producers or doers or the control and quality people. Digging deeper into what was their experience before. We used to do some sessions in the team where during a team meeting, they'd actually say, this is what I did before I arrived at this place and this is what my passions and interests are. And there's so much talent teams that you can tap into. That's great. So switching then onto the topic of leadership and coaching, fantastic, amazing career, big brands, global roles. What leadership insights or principles have helped guide you throughout your career?
Yeah, so many. Look, I've been around a while, clearly. In all of the roles I've had, I've never saved lives or cured cancer, sadly. So I have a really healthy perspective on managing my stress levels, and staying consistent and enjoying what I'm doing. If I'm not having fun, Ty, then I walk away. Life's way too short and we spend way too much time at work not to experience joy on a regular basis. And I've walked away on 3 occasions in my career. So I absolutely walk that talk. So look, healthy perspective, enjoy what you do, use humour, use curiosity, but don't over sort of amplify or complicate what it is you're doing as a marketer, unless you are saving lives or curing cancer.
I think that's such a useful perspective because at times, when you're fighting fires or you're helping sort out issues with the team, it can feel like overwhelming and so important. But it's not until sometimes you take a holiday or you step back or you get some space, go back to the country, you realise, we're not saving lives here. And that used to be actually one of my old boss's sayings is, we're not saving lives. Put it into perspective. I think that's a great one. And what's been your biggest leadership mistake or regret? And what did you learn from it?
Look, I don't do regrets. My philosophy is if you're not winning, you're learning. So with that, I guess, realising at quite an early stage in my early 30s, when I was leading a department and team in the direct marketing agency or the relationship marketing agency in Sydney, it didn't matter how many hours I worked. I'd never be fully on top of it. I had this realisation, and thank goodness I had it early. So the importance of prioritising and delegating would mean I could also have a life. So I learned that very quickly. And look, quite frankly, nobody's ever paid me enough to give up my life outside of work. So until that time, I'll always be, again, recognising that if I'm not winning, I'm learning, and the importance of prioritising and delegating, I think.
Yeah, makes sense. What then have you found most challenging about leadership?
Oh, personalities. Walking into an organisation and assuming that you are going to be working with expert senior leaders who are well-known, well-regarded, with this massive profile, massive brain, who are good people who communicate well. That ain't always the case. And when you rely on those people to communicate well, for you to do your job well, and they don't, it can be really, really challenging. And that's been the biggest challenge for me. And that's happened probably twice in my career. I realised after beating my head against a brick wall, maybe for 2 weeks after either inheriting this new leader or walking into a situation where this new leader was, that without clarity of communication, whether it be the written or the spoken, because you might get 2-word emails or you might get blank stares verbally without any communication, that there's no way you could be a mind reader. And if you were trying to be a mind reader, the chances are you'd bugger it up. That would be the challenge. And I addressed that really quickly. I have a direct conversation with, I need more communication. I might use humour. Blonde, I'm a bit slow. You're going to have to start talking to me and being a bit more specific so I can get the information I need. Or if it doesn't look like that's going to happen because of a lack of self-awareness on that particular leader, or they just can't communicate, they don't have those skills, then I walk away.
Yeah. Makes sense. What about, often you hear I think the most tricky parts about leadership, especially driving change, is perhaps dealing with the poor performers or those that may be holding the team back. Have you got any lesson around that? I know personally sometimes I took a little too long to deal with that, or especially when there were people that were creating disruption in the team and I wasn't underneath it enough, across it enough, from enough angles to realise that and take action quick enough. Is that something you've experienced as well?
Absolutely. So there's a great line, bad news doesn't age well. If something's wrong, deal with it. It ain't going to go away by itself. And if it does go away by itself, you've had no control or influence in it, and chances are it won't work. We are human beings with emotions, and emotions overall rationalisation often. And I always come at a poor performer or somebody who's causing a cultural issue in a team as somebody who is having some challenges, I don't know anyone who gets out of bed in the morning and says, I'm going to work today to muck it up. I really don't. I don't think people start with that, and I don't think they want to end with that. So something is going on. So find out. Have a one-on-one, trusted, respectful, empathetic conversation and ask some questions. Sometimes, and this has happened more often than not when I have been working with a poor performer, they're in the wrong job. They don't actually like what they're doing. They don't like what you stand for. They don't actually engage with the brand or the service, or they're having some problems with other people. And so the sooner you can identify that then opens up a whole lot of choices for that person. How are they going to go forward, and how can you help them and support them? I've helped a number of people get out of an organisation and go into a different organisation because I have great networks and they're good people. They're in the wrong role. And the minute you recognise that and you can accept it and then go and find what absolutely sparks joy, your life changes from that minute on.
Yeah, absolutely. Great perspective and advice. And on that, what is some of the worst advice that you've received or overheard?
Oh, you're going to get me in trouble here.
Don't have to name names, of course.
No. How long have you got? Look, I've got a series on LinkedIn at the moment called Things I've Heard, and it's fast becoming Things We've Heard. Look, it's very entertaining, and it's things that I've heard leaders say, and now others are also contributing. So we're building up quite a library. I'm up to number 10, but one of the most special would have to be, you can either be a good mother or good at your job, but you can't be both.
Yeah. Wow.
Now, that's not advice. That's just BS, actually. In today's world, it's hard to believe somebody could say that, but there are attitudes out there. It is people that have that mindset or that think that are not going to be surrounded by rock stars and probably aren't going to have a long or very successful career if that's their attitude. So check out Things I've Heard on LinkedIn, my series, and have a look at some of the advice I've overheard or heard directly or others have shared with me. It's gold.
Yeah, love that. Yeah, I think for me, one thing I recall was roll out more agile ways of working a number of organisations ago. And part of that is test and learn. And the leader kind of said, yeah, you can roll this out, but just don't make too many mistakes. Don't accept failure around here. And it's like, kind of flies in the face of what we're trying to implement, where it's test and learn and fail fast.
And let's unpack failure.
Yeah.
What do we mean by failure?
Yeah.
Is anyone dying?
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Is the company being brought down?
Yeah.
Come on.
Yeah. Onto mentors and coaches, and how important have they been in your career, and what advice do you have to CMOs about getting the right help to be successful in their career?
Great question. Look, firstly, I think it's important to define the difference between a mentor and a coach.
Yep.
Then I can answer your question accurately. So a mentor is someone who gives you advice, and that's based on their own personal experience. You know, these are wise souls, and we can learn a lot from them. And every job I've ever had, I've gained incredibly valuable advice from a broad range of mentors. You know, some were regular long-term mentors that were aware they were my mentor. Others were people who were probably not even aware that I saw them as a mentor because they only gave me one or two pieces of advice, but it was gold. And I recall one such person many years ago, back in my banking days, who was one of the clearest thinking people I've ever worked with. She didn't always say a lot, but when she did, it was mind-blowing. One of those people. This particular day, after many months of frustration, I said to her, I must need to be doing something different as things just aren't working out as they had been promised to me. And she looked me dead in the eye and she said, maybe it's not you who needs to be different. Maybe it's a change in leadership you need. And it helped me realise that not always is a role or a leader right. And if after some time things aren't working, then it's okay to make a different choice. But getting back to the question, a coach versus a mentor is someone who uses their skills to empower you by their ongoing inquiry, by their questioning. And that is their regularity in asking you excellent questions and helping you explore all the possible options and outcomes that you've got at your disposal. This increases your confidence. It helps you better reframe a situation more positively, and it builds your creative and strategic thinking. But most of all, it means you become much more self-aware, and that's a key competitive advantage as a leader today. So with mentoring, it's somebody giving you great advice based on their experience. With coaching, it's someone asking you a lot of questions and empowering you to come up with all of the different opportunities and options in order to solve something or identify something. Visa gave me an executive coach and it changed my life, so much so that I've now chosen a new pathway after 25 years of corporate life. I really believe in coaching.
Yeah. Yeah, me too. I've had the benefit of both as well. Like I think working in higher education, a lot of leadership training from some of the best organisations. And I've really enjoyed coaches to unpack 360s and help develop development plans as well as personality profiles and ask that line of inquiry that makes you go deeper into yourself and where you're going and help you on that journey. And I've had, wonderful mentors that have walked the path before you, that have seen the pitfalls and they've dodged some of the bullets, and I think they can also, both a coach and mentor can sometimes see things in you that you can't quite see yet, whether it's a level of confidence to take a big role or to take on a new challenge, which I've found useful. And some of mine, I remember, still remember some messages from one of my previous bosses, which was kind of don't startle the troops. Like I used to race back and forth to meetings through the office. I'd be off to my next meeting, race back just because of the way I was always fast moving, fast talking.
High energy.
Yeah, high energy. And I'm surprisingly not, but I always seem to walk fast. Maybe it's because I'm tall. But don't startle the troops was a good one, as well as just smiling more. I think I had one of those resting faces, which wasn't very smiley. That gave off a certain impression. They were two things that kind of struck with me, to just smile more, be myself, and don't startle the troops. Any last lessons on mentors, coaches, or are you ready for our Fast Five?
I think based on time and the fact that we've been speaking so long, we probably should move to the Fast Five, Ty. So hit me with it.
Do it. What do you believe are 3 essential capabilities or criteria of a high-performance marketing team?
A diversity of thought, experience and perspective, respect for each other's skills and expertise, and I think that sense of purpose and passion for what you do every day.
Yeah. Love that. And how would you describe your previous team's culture in one word?
Oh, a culture of appreciation and gratitude. They appreciated each other. They appreciated the work they got to influence and impact every day. They also appreciated working for such an amazing, trusted brand that they were trustees of.
Yeah, amazing. And what's one metric you've successfully used to track and measure team performance?
Yeah, MROI, marketing return on investment, quantifying that extraordinary value that we bring back to the business.
Yeah. Brilliant. And what's one skill or capability you've learned recently you wish you'd learned earlier in your career?
Won't be surprising, but asking more questions more often and listening to understand, because what you learn when you actively listen is actually quite incredible.
Yeah. And on that, coming back to the coaching, I know I'm going against my own rules of Fast Five, but I also think that CMOs and marketing leaders actually doing coaching training so useful. Like I remember doing that just to ask the right questions and change your own leadership style. Do you agree?
Absolutely. Absolutely. The more questions you can ask in a way that doesn't sound like you're interrogating or scrutinising somebody. It's not a court of law heading up the marketing department. But no, the better that you can ask questions, the more information you get. And the more information you get, the more opportunities you've got to be really broad thinking and creative.
Yeah, fantastic. And lastly, what book or books have you read that you found yourself recommending to others or you think our audience would find value from?
Yeah, look, I've got a couple. I love biographies and real life stories. I'm not much of a fiction girl. The Trauma Clip, an awesome true Melbourne story that generates empathy for diversity. Shoe Dog, the Nike story.
Yeah, I love that one.
It's great for any budding entrepreneur. A real classic that's still relevant today as it was when it was first published is Good to Great, Jim Collins. And another cool read that I dug out of my library here at the farm actually just recently is Life's a Pitch, which is really cool if you want to be an influential presenter.
Good one. I have to check that one out. I don't know if you've heard of Pitch Anything by Oren.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
That was really useful as well. On, how to pitch anything, which is good. Well, fantastic, Jac. Really loved our discussion today. Fascinating to hear about your amazing career, all the leadership lessons that you've learned along the way. I think your leadership style and approach and energy is really clear and come across today. And I can see how your interest in coaching has come about. And on that note, what's next for you? You've kind of touched on that might be the direction you're heading to next.
Unlocking the potential in people and brands, Ty. This is what gets me out of bed in the morning, firing on all fours. I'm doing that via a new leadership coaching business I've just started, as well as continuing to offer marketing advisory services. I'm also embarking on my first board role. So I'm a bit of a portfolio career and working from this magic place that I'm lucky to live in. So,
Brilliant. Well, I wish you the best of luck in that. And where can people go to find out more about you?
LinkedIn is a platform I'm very active on. You can check out my new Insta handle as well for my coaching business, which is at jac.phillips.coaching.
Yeah. Excellent. Well, Jac, once again, thank you for coming on the show.
Pleasure. Thank you, Ty.
Thanks so much for listening to this episode of Lean Mean Marketing Teams, brought to you by Growth Generators. To say thanks, we've packaged up all those tips, strategies and resources into some beautifully crafted notes just for you, so you can spend more time taking action and less time taking notes. To grab the notes, head on over to growthgenerators.io, look out for this podcast episode and download the notes. But be quick, they're only live for a few weeks after the episode airs.